to me, that's not very practical. And the other part of it is that you see a lot of old fancy stuff. I watched a demonstration some years ago in Long Beach, and the announcer made a statement, Mr. So-and-so, I won't call her name, is going to execute 32 techniques. Well, he didn't. And the guy threw one punch, and he stood there, and the guy threw 32 techniques on him, and then the guy finally falls down. Well, I think if you got to have to throw 32 techniques, man, you better take off or get you a pistol or something and get out of training. So to me, that's not very practical, and it's certainly not simple. So to me, you just have to keep things simple. You know, you learn your techniques. Okay, the fancy stuff is not going to work, and I just termed that my teacher, Mr. Gucci, would often say that there's a lot of things that we don't have in Goju, so there's a supplementary training that he often pushes for an example. And so I give an example of students. I said, well, supplementary training can be could be anything. I said, for an example, if you want to crawl up on top of this building and run across at the edge and do a flying side kick, you know, that it looks real sweet, but that sudden stop's going to hurt you. So that's not very practical.
I have to relate the story, and then I have to ask a question. I was having pie and coffee with you one day, and you asked the waitress if you could look at the bottom of the pie before you ate it, because you said you didn't want any pie crust that was like a dumpling. What is this aversion you have to dumplings? What is the problem you have with dumplings?
Well, when I was a very young kid, you know, I'd never had a dumpling, you know, and so my mother was making them, you know, and I was watching her. We're taking her dough and some flour and I think she might have put an egg in it and some water, salt and pepper, stuff like that. And there's a big old. She would take this here little clump in her hand and drop it in some boiling water, you know, and man, I tried that, and it slid down, but it slid out, and that was the last time I tried a dumpling. So now if I have a piece of pie, if it's not completely brown on the bottom or close to being burned up, I don't need it. And same thing with my pancakes. You know, they have to be almost burned up. Because me and dumplings don't get along, you know.
A lot of dojos, especially karate, talk about being traditional. What's traditional to you?
Well, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you have to expand on tradition. I think I use the term, you know, there's people out there writing about history and stuff like that, and there's an author that had wrote a book, pretty popular, Goju Stalis, and he was talking about history for an example. I'm going to come back to the traditional thing a little bit later, but now if you actually read that book, you can kind of question, well, that wasn't right. You know, there's a lot of lies being done out there now and then. And so, like, tradition, to me, is what I've been taught, and I will continue to teach, you know, but you have to expand on it, you know. It's not taken, for an example, we'll take Giksai 1 for an example, and take Giksai and then just change that kata around where it might be similar to a Giksai, but, man, what in the hell is that? To me, that's not good, but, you know, if teachers are doing that, that's their business, you know. But personally, I think what you've been taught, that would be your tradition in that particular system. And for an example, I have a group of schools out in the New York area, and, man, there's a lot of work to be done out there, you know, because a lot of things have been changed around, you know, but I am seeing those changes for the better now, you know. So we had a group come back to our convention this year, and one of the students out there says, man, we've been bullshitted all these years. And I said, well, you know, you must do what you've been taught, you know. And I said, we do a little bit different. And I said, you know, my lineage is under Mr. Taguchi, you know. And I said, Miyagi had other senior students, you know. And so, and there is slight differences, but in most cases, those katas are really, really close, you know. And I went to a tournament up in Illinois, for an example, last year. And one of the students, one of the guys up there is Goju Stalis, and he made a point to come right over to me and says, you know, I would just come back from Okinawa, and I trained with Miyazato. Well, it's been a few years back, a couple of years ago. But he would say, I trained with Miyazato, and he would tell me that, your kata is exactly like we do it. And I didn't say anything. I said, well, that's fine, but I know that was bullshit, see, because I trained actually in that dojo, So.
What makes a good martial artist in your book?
A person, I think, first of all, we got to define what's good. The other part of it is, I think, for a person that's in the martial arts, whether it be karate, whatever the case might be, if you're a dedicated student, just train, and train to the best of your ability, and I often refer to the word kung fu. A lot of people look at this word and think kung fu artist is a good fighter. Well, that might be, but the actually true interpretation of kung fu is being a top in whatever you might do. Whether it be doing a punch, you may be a plumber, you may be a mechanic, but the kung fu interpretation of it is just being the best. So as you're training in the art, just be the best that you can be, And so, for an example, there's a lot of handicapped people now that are getting involved in the art. They have to do their best. So to me, if they're doing their best right, they're good in their system,
What's the three most important things you tell a student, or maybe 2 or 5, whatever the number may be, but what are the most important things that you can say to a student?
Number one, the martial art is not the top of your priority. I tell students that. Your priority is, first of all, to yourself. If you have a family, you got to take care of that family. If you don't have a family right, you might have other obligations, but the martial art thing is not the number one thing, okay? That can be a supporter. In other words, there's a lot of stress out there. So if you can come to the dojo and throw 2 or 3 punches or kicks or something and feel better afterward, then that's good. The other thing, as I said, right, in my teaching, right, the answer's on the floor, okay? Don't talk. Just go out there and start throwing punches and kicks, whatever the case might be. And I'm going to push your button. I also tell the students, I go back to the KIS, just keep it simple. The fancy stuff's not going to work in the street, And I tell students, you're not learning this thing to fight in the street. You learn this thing not to fight in the street, And then I tell them, just keep it practical. Just keep it practical, And so that's basically what I just share with the students, The fancy stuff don't work. And just be the best that you can be. And then share.
Excuse me. You've got a 91-year-old gentleman teaching judo in your dojo. Tell us something about Paul Owen.
Well, I've known Paul ever since I've been to Lincoln. As a matter of fact, when I first came to Lincoln, I went to the University of Nebraska over there, and I worked in the ROTC program over there, and they had a judo club there. It's when I first met Paul, and this was back in 1968. And so he was actually was teaching over there. And there was a fellow prior to my getting that fellow by the name of Sasio Ishida was actually doing his doctoral work or something at the U there. And Paul was a student of his. And then after Sasio left, then he kind of become my student in a sense. And so we just kind of been friends after that. And so after I retired from the military and opened up a dojo, so he started coming over and started training with me, and he's been there ever since. So, just remarkable, kind of my mentor, I'm just hoping that when I hit the 91 thing that I'm still out there doing it, And he's no joke, I mean he's 91 years old, but he get out there and scrap with them little kids. Mainly teaches the kids, But he scraps with them, And he holds his own. But he's just a remarkable person.
Well, that's an example of somebody who's clearly not letting retirement become the fast rail to the grave.
I agree with that, and I think the other thing, if he would have stopped training, I think he probably would have been dead. You just never know, but I think I tell people now, they say, well, what keeps you in shape, man? I say, I do a little bit often. I think it's hard for some people to really accept as they're getting older, well, I'm getting old, I can't do that. So I look at that, I said, that's bullshit, man. I said, come on. I said, you can get off that couch. I said, I give a set of exercises now. I said, a simple exercise you can do. He said, I want to get in shape. I said, okay, 10 times per day, I want you to fall down on the floor or just go down on the floor, get up and stand up and go back down. Do it 10 times a day. And you'd just be surprised at the muscles that you actually work. Just being on the floor, standing up, going back down, standing down, doing this 10 times. And then go out and start walking or something, So there's